very special edition of Comic Watchers. Comic Watchers is brought to you by Comic Watch. Comic Watch is your source for all your comics and media, news and reviews written by fans for fans. I'm your host, Cody, and as you can see, there's just the two of us today. It's Matt and I holding down the fort while everybody else is off gallivanting the world. So we decided to do things a little bit different. We're still going to bring you the news. We had planned on doing 3 spotlight books this week. We were going to do Silver Surfer Black. Meh. We were going to do Event Leviathan #1. Pretty good. And we were going to cover the latest 2 issues of The Walking Dead, number 191 and 192, and the massive events of those books. And they were really excellent. Truly, truly excellent. But instead, we're going to do a special spotlight on Doomsday Clock because Matt and I are both super into it, and we assume that you are too. But before we get to that, Matt, you got some news?
Yeah, big news broke today. After a week or two of teasing on Twitter, it was finally announced that Brian Michael Bendis is going to be leading DC's resurgence of Legion of Superheroes. He's going to kick it off with a 2-issue miniseries subtitled Millennium. And evidently, according to the early descriptions of it, it's going to take all of DC's many and disparate future histories and try to tie them into one streamlined narrative / timeline. All of it leading up to and trying to give a foundation for the timeline that the Legion exists in. I was personally a little hesitant about Bendis writing Legion just because of his tendency to write comics full of talking heads when it's a large cast. I don't think any of us will dispute the fact that he's much, much better at street level heroes. Daredevil, Ultimate Spider-Man, Batman, etc., etc. So I wasn't feeling it. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine, but I read an excellent interview with him today talking about the book and just the sheer amount of prep work that he's put into it. And he talked to Dan Jurgens specifically about what he plans to do with Booster Gold. And Dan Jurgens allegedly gave that his endorsement. So that to me is a big thing. I know Cody's a pretty big Booster Gold fan. Booster Gold Booster. So, yeah, that's going to start in September, and Bendis is not being shy about the fact that he wants to be on this book for a very, very long time, which I would love to see. He always does better with long-form storytelling where he can really flesh his story out. So that's coming up. We've also got... Cody, what else did we have from this last week? I think Warren Ellis
Also in September is Scott Snyder resurrecting the Justice Society of America. Of course, both of these are teams that are being reconstituted in Doomsday Clock, so I mean, it's just perfect timing for us to talk about Doomsday Clock and those kind of ramifications. But that should be a good series, too. Yeah. Snyder does pretty well, I feel like, with characters that are beloved. Like, he's good at taking a beloved character and keeping them that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of the other options out there that could have been writing Justice Society. I won't name any names, Tom King. But, so I was really glad to see that Snyder is taking this project and not Bendis, who I think is overextending himself. I'm not as excited about Legion as you are. Partly just, I've seen him do this time and time again where he gets... 100 dream projects at once, and then all of them suffer. So I fear that. But I'm not the biggest Legion fan in the world either. So I am a big Booster Gold fan. I'm looking forward to seeing how he integrates that.
Yeah. Both of these books are supposed to have, their big reemergence was supposed to tie into Doomsday Clock, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in our lengthier discussion.
Yes. But yes, you mentioned Warren Ellis. Warren Ellis has been announced as relaunching Wildcats as a part of the Wildstorm initiative.
For the 15th or 16th time.
For the 15th or 16th time. But I think this is the first time that Ellis has actually written Wildcats.
Yeah, other than the Wildcats Aliens one-shot that effectively killed Stormwatch
Everybody.
and gave
Right.
us The Authority.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been his big work with those characters. He's done a lot of legwork with the Wild Storm, reestablishing that world and that continuity and those characters. It's almost done. It's only got one issue left. It's been a fantastic ride.
It really has been.
It's probably the best Warren Ellis I've read in at least 10 years. At least. And you know,
okay. All right.
I'm pretty big Warren
Did you read
Ellis.
Shipwrecked?
I did not. I'm not a huge fan of Phil Hester's art.
That's fair. Shipwrecked was pretty dang good, and Fell was astonishing.
Oh, I forgot about Fell. I think that's outside of the 10-year time limit at this point. If you want to feel a little bit old.
No way.
I think it was.
I could
pretty
swear
sure
I was reading
about
that in
06, 07. Fantastic series. So that's kind of it for comics news. We don't have a lot of media stuff going on this week other than the ongoing drama with the cancellation of Swamp Thing, which now we're hearing rumors that there were 3 seasons planned that were going to lead up to a Justice League Dark series. If that's true, and I say if because it's not confirmed, that's a huge loss for fandom. Huge loss.
That's to say that they're not going to still do it. Like, they still could find a way to.
Oh, absolutely. I don't believe for a second the Swamp Thing property is going to be completely dead.
Yeah.
So,
it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Dark Phoenix bombed in theaters.
Hard.
Like a $14 million Friday night.
That $14 million, my friend, was Thursday and Friday night.
So rough.
So rough. Such a sad ending to Fox's tenure. No, 2-decade tenure with the X-Men as a franchise. Just completely out of steam.
Extra kills me because I still think First Class is in like the top 5 best superhero movies of all time.
Oh, it's good.
I thought First Class was brilliant.
Liberties.
Yeah. Yeah,
even though it takes some liberties, I really enjoy it. It effectively captures the spirit of the X-Men in a way that is very unique unto itself.
Right. Yeah, very much so. So, rest in peace, Dark Phoenix. It was pretty terrible. It deserves to not make a lot of money.
I haven't seen it. I'll wait for streaming. I just can't do it.
Catch it on FX.
Yeah. It's definitely. I guess our last little bit of news is this weird news item with a major creator quitting Twitter. And I wouldn't ordinarily want to make a big deal out of a creator quitting Twitter because it happens all the time. Now, sometimes the circumstances behind a famous somebody quitting merits a discussion, but this is just so bizarre that I don't know. It just defies categorization. But Rob Liefeld, he of the pouches and tight crotched pants and no feet and guns that don't look like guns, decided to quit Twitter after he made a rather ill-advised, apparently off-the-cuff statement that DC, because of their management, was going to be out of business in 6 months. Obviously just shooting his mouth off. Whatever, he does that from time to time. But Twitter reacted pretty predictably, and he got defensive. And the next day, he just said, "You know what? Fuck it. I'm done with Twitter." You would think
he blocked like 200 people or something.
Right. You'd think he would have learned his lesson from that. But instead, he took to Facebook to leak a supposed Extreme Studios and DC comic that had not been announced that Jim Lee had been supposedly pursuing him on, and then turn around and trash DC's management even more. And I don't know. It's bizarre. And it's one of those things you can't make up. Like, if I just told you about this without you having read it and seen the evidence, you'd be like, no, that's stupid. Nobody's that stupid.
Somebody is.
Somebody is. So it's just so also incoherent that I have to wonder if, like, maybe he's on some meds that are not working right for him or he's mismedicating something. I don't know. But I hope it all sorts itself out because I kind of wanted. I don't wish ill upon the guy at all. I don't wish ill upon very many people. And, he doesn't deserve to be harassed on Twitter and harassed to the point that he quits Twitter just because he shoots his mouth off about something stupid that he has no idea what he's talking about. But if he is suffering a mental breakdown or is mismedicating or something crazy like that, I wish him the best. I hope it sorts itself out. So I think that's it for news. Unless you can think of anything else, Cody.
No, that's pretty much everything I had for this week.
All right. Well, brothers and sisters, let's kick off our big talk about Doomsday Clock. Cody, start us off.
If you have been living in a cave for the last year and a half, Doomsday Clock, being written by Jeff Johns, drawn by Gary Frank, colors by Brad Anderson, and letters by Rob Lay. Yes, off the top. I got it. We're 10 issues in, and it has, of course, faced major delay issues. It started out as a monthly, then became a quarterly, then we're lucky if it's quarterly. But we've reached issue 10 of 12. Now, in the event that you were just completely blind to everything happening in comics right now, and I don't know why you'd be watching this podcast if you were, this is the alleged sequel to Watchmen. This is the movement to bring the Watchmen characters, Dr. Manhattan, Ozymandias, Rorschach, all into the mainstream DC universe. That's the general premise that we were sold on. That is not exactly what I would call this, or not even really necessarily close to what I would call this. What this is, to me, has been a meta commentary on the entire comic book industry, from fans to editorial interventions. I feel like this has been Jeff Johns' legacy piece. That 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, this is a book we're going to be talking about. And nobody's going to be worried about the delays, and everybody's complaining. I'm not even going to read it because it's never going to end. Or I'm going to be 65 when it ends. Well, maybe, but you're going to be 65 and talking about it because it's just that damn good. Gary Frank's art in it is absolutely spectacular. He manages to maintain his own integrity as an artist while still also aping Dave Gibbons. Like, you can feel Watchmen in this book. So I think that's really just how I'd like to preface it, and I think we should just kind of talk about it. Like, there's the major bombshell at the end of number 10 that I really, to me, is a game changer for comics as a whole. Like, this opens up. So I mean, Matt, talk to me about your thoughts on Doomsday Clock.
So, as with everybody, I was, of course, very skeptical about a purported sequel to Watchmen. I mean, it's fucking Watchmen. It stands alone. And we've seen DC try to play in that pool before with the before Watchmen various miniseries that came out. What was it, about 2009 or so? And they were supposed to be prequels. And the big thing that leaps out about those series right away is not any technical deficiencies. I mean, if just taken solely on their own merits, they're all at least decent, if not outright good. Darwin Cook did some work. I mean, Straczynski did some stuff. Freaking Brian Azzarello wrote both The Comedian and Rorschach. Taken on their own merits, they're fine. But if you step back from them, you have to ask yourself, do these stories have a reason to exist? Is it worth knocking on Watchmen's hallowed door in order for these comics to be here? Are we have a reason, or is it a cash grab? And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the general consensus has been cash grab because they don't have a legacy. And they really, again, when you stand far back from them, don't have a reason to be here. Conversely, though, Doomsday Clock absolutely exists for a reason. It is not a sequel. I don't want to say it's a sequel because sequel implies that it's merely a continuation of the stories and the themes, but rather it's a catalyst for examining, like Cody was saying, for examining DC as a whole, why it functions the way that it does, why it is unique unto itself, and really what makes it great. You know, and yes, there's some meta commentary in there about about the failings of the New 52 and the loss of the sense of wonder in the DC universe that many of us felt. Now, I won't say everybody, because Cody, I know you were a pretty big supporter of New 52, so I don't want you to feel singled out or anything like that, or anybody else listening at this point. But Doomsday Clock, in using the Watchmen characters and the Watchmen narrative and the Watchmen storytelling techniques, really brings a sense of gravity and weight, which is the same thing, to this series that it otherwise might not have had. And some people do say it's blasphemy. You shouldn't touch these characters. Well, I call bullshit on that. If you've got these great characters, and you need to be respectful of them. You need to be respectful of their legacy. But right now, they were just toys sitting in a toy box that nobody was using. You know, DC said the same thing about other Alan Moore properties like Tom Strong and Promethea recently, and dusted them off and brought them out for other creators to play with to varying degrees of success. But, you know, they had the balls to do it. They realized, hey, why are there never going to be any more stories with Tom Strong to be told? You know, sitting here and saying that only Alan Moore can write these characters is just silly. But at the same time, it's a fine line to being respectful towards the initial characters and the initial themes. And, you know, there's always going to be grumpy old fans that are going to disagree with me on this. And that's fine. That's their opinion. But using Doc Manhattan as the catalyst for all change within the DC universe, as essentially as God, but not just God, but a sort of meta God that exists outside of continuity, i.e. creators, is the real gift that Doomsday Clock pulls off. And if you're going to try to pull off that story, you have to go big. You have to have a Doc Manhattan caliber character to really, really press home the fact that, yes, this is that big. So it works on both the micro and macro level. Go ahead.
So my understanding of the events of Doomsday Clock 10, right, where we're looking, Doc Manhattan first arrives to our universe, he can't see into the future, and then once he acclimates himself to it, he starts to see inconsistencies. I was not under the impression that the shifts in times of Superman arriving on Earth, whether that's, you know, June 14th, 1938, or 1986, or, you know, whatever it was, 2011, I was not under the impression that he was actually manipulating those events. That he was observing them and noting that those shifts in reality were impacting the greater multiverse. Am I wrong in that reading, or?
Well, my impression, I mean, I don't have my copy right in front of me, so I could be mistaken, was that he was saying that he was intentionally playing with once he realized that the arrival of Superman is the catalyst for all these other cascading events, that he was kind of testing the waters of this newfound Earth by moving Superman's arrival to different time periods. So that right there accounts for the sudden missing 10 years in New 52.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because he moved Superman's arrival ahead, I guess 10 years, and suddenly everyone's memory was messed up because of it.
Right. Okay.
That's
I
my
was just curious. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. The issue itself left me with kind of some lingering dread, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if it's not him, if he's just observing these various changes and moments, then who?
Well,
right.
Okay, but it's actually that comes back around to the I think it's the last page of the book where he comes to the realization that in making all of these changes, he's the villain of this universe.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah, that's when he becomes aware of the true nature of not just his actions, but also the ramification and how they are perceived. And that in and of itself is metaphorical for any time DC has changed, creators have changed the continuity, be it Crisis or Flashpoint or Zero Hour. There's always that demographic of fans that cast them as villains for having changed things.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely brilliant commentary on Geoff Johns' part.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the fact that Geoff Johns is our modern day villain. Right? Like, he's the architect. He was the chief creative officer for many of these massive changes. I feel like he was not yet the chief creative officer for Final Crisis.
No. When they reorganized around the time of New 52, it was he, Jim Lee, and Dan Didio in sort of a trifecta with kind of various titles and nebulous job descriptions. And I kind of got the feeling around that time that Geoff Johns' role was more to be at the DC brand ambassador to Hollywood. And that's kind of why he stepped away from writing as much as he did, especially during those early years of New 52. Now, I mean, he was writing Aquaman and Justice League, but I don't think you're going to find very many Geoff Johns fans that think that those workbooks are among his best. Now, they're not bad. I'm not saying that. But they lack that certain Geoff Johns finesse that we'd come to know and love.
Although
especially the early first year of Justice League.
Which I think was totally different.
I honestly think he consciously changed his writing style to accommodate Jim Lee.
Oh man, I thought the subtlety of forging the League in that first arc was genius. Like
really?
It was the little bits. It was the way that everybody talked down to Batman. And socially,
that's an interesting point. I mean, I'll grant you, it's been years since I've read that first arc, so I'd have to dig it out and reread it. But that's not a point I remember thinking about. So,
and it did happen to be right about the time of Occupy Wall Street. So I mean, there was the big national debate of 99% versus the 1%, and here you've got Batman as clearly a 1%er. Like, what? You're just rich. That's all you've got. That's all you bring to the table. You're rich. Great. I'm super fast, and he can make anything with his magic ring.
They were still making the Justice League movie.
Right.
But
sorry, I didn't mean to derail us.
No, you're good. I mean, a little sidebar isn't bad. So yeah, back to Doomsday Clock. Cody, what do you want to get into a little bit more detail as to the since you wrote the review on Doomsday Clock 10, do you want to talk about the major significance of that issue?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the major point of this entire issue was the realization that New Earth, Earth 1, Earth Prime, whatever you call it, the canonical center of the DC multiverse, is not actually a part of the multiverse. that it is in itself a metaverse that in turn writes over everything else. So when Crisis on Infinite Earths comes out in 1985 and eliminates the multiverse, that's because our Earth is overwriting the rest of the multiverse. It disappears. Everything's gone until 0 Hour comes and rebirths it. Infinite Crisis rebirths it.
No, you got it right.
No,
0 Hour and then Infinite Crisis.
Right, but 0 Hour doesn't rebirth the multiverse. 0 Hour just.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Earth Prime.
I misheard you.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of these various continuity cleanups, because that's what they are. Yeah, Crisis is nothing more than a continuity cleanup. You get to 1985 and you realize, oh crap. In the 40s, Superman was a member of the Justice Society. But then we had the 80s series where he's not a member of the Justice Society. And somewhere in there, how do we account for that? How do we account for the various Golden Age heroes traveling to Earth 2, existing there without our prime characters? Like, they just needed a cleanup. It was like
they did
orthoscopic surgery.
If I can have sidebar number 2 real quick.
Sure.
That's always been the company line about Crisis, but I can't help but notice that after Crisis, the DC universe looks and functions a hell of a lot more like the Marvel universe, who had been kicking DC's ass in sales for about 15 years at that point. And I think that may have played a part. That's just my own little pet theory.
I'm sure, but part of that is that Marvel didn't have 20 years of continuity to have to try to shoehorn in 1961.
Well, you're right, but another big key difference is that the Marvel Universe was organically built from the ground up starting in 1961, whereas the DC Universe was cobbled together with bits and pieces that were bought from other companies, the Gold Key heroes, etc. Shazam, and all of these things that were just sort of cobbled together over the years, and it wound up being something of a mess.
Right. So I mean, I do believe that the intent was a continuity cleanup, and then come 1996 or whatever that was, 94 with 0 Hour, they realized, yeah, we left a couple of things off the table that maybe we could do a little bit better. And 0 Hour is kind of like a soft reboot. Like, let's fix a few things, tweak some stuff. And then come Infinite Crisis, they realized, God damn, you know what we did? We wiped out our multiverse, and that just hamstrung us. Like, how fun is a multiverse? Everybody likes it.
Yeah.
So they respawn their multiverse, and then realize, come Flashpoint, that they just need a change. They just need a revamp. That things are lagging behind, that characters are outdated, outmoded. So they tried to revamp that, and in the process of revamping that, what they ended up really gutting from the DC universe is love and legacy.
And what was weird about the New 52 reboot was the way that they branded it as a soft reboot, which basically translated to, if your book is Batman or Green Lantern and selling really well, we're not going to do much to dick with it. But if it's not selling well, we're going to change a lot. So things just got really confusing, especially when they kicked the line off by saying it's only been 5 years since superheroes first emerged. So suddenly you're dealing with this massively condensed timeline that makes absolutely no goddamn sense for a character like Batman, with all the various and sundry history that character entails. But if you're starting fresh with, say, Aquaman or Justice League, that kind of works. So,
and I mean, and all of this really ties back to. So I mentioned this in the review of Doomsday Clock 10, but Umberto Eco, the famed grammatologist, semiotician, wrote an essay for an issue of Dialectics back in 1976 called The Myth of Superman. And in that essay, he talks about how comics, because it's operating on a myth-like structure, the comic superhero at all times cannot be consumed like a regular narrative. that it's always moving forward but never moving towards death, like towards a complete consumption. Like you read a novel front to back,
Sure.
you've consumed that novel. There's no end, right? And because of that, and the periodical format, that it creates a temporal paradox. That the superhero is always of the moment. He's always contemporaneous and also not being consumed. And we've never seen a property like that. Mythology is the closest we have, but we've never really seen a medium try to deal with that, and to deal with it for 80 years. And that is almost insurmountable.
Yeah.
And almost necessitates the occasional reboot, the occasional shifting of time. Like, how can Superman live in a pre-World War II world and also the internet age with his cast of characters? You know, it's the same problem that the X-Men films were dealing with Magneto. You know, here's a Holocaust survivor in 1992, looking fit as hell. He looks good. Fassbender's a good-looking man. So
We've seen him naked. We have proof.
Right, right. So I mean, this is kind of what, to me, the creation of this notion of a metaverse explicitly deals with and solves in a way that has not yet been solved before.
Yes.
The notion that just moving a particular piece, right, the man of action, through time and space can alter all of this, can easily eliminate all of these continuity problems.
Well, and what it also does is it eliminates the argument over which periods of continuity in history count. It all counts because it all happened.
Right.
And that's not just, me as a reader saying that, because I can pick up any comic from, 1965 and read it and enjoy it. I mean, literally, canonically now, everything counts. It's all part of the same tapestry. And to your point, which I absolutely love, the idea of the temporal paradox that you were talking about. Basically, superheroes are perpetually stuck in their second act. The first act, of course, is the origin, and the second act is where we stay. And then you'll never see the end of Batman's story. You'll never see the end of Superman's story. And by the way, I didn't come up with that. I read that from a Chris Sims article some years ago. Credit where credit's due. But it's true. You can futz with these pieces of all you want. You can, and we'll just use Superman as an example. Let's use Spider-Man as an example, because he's had more weird change. You can have Spider-Man get married, get cloned, almost have a baby, get unmarried again, and he's always going to revert to the baseline Spider-Man at some point or another. Dan Slott can do whatever the hell he wants for 10 years. And at the end of the day, the next writer, or maybe the next writer, is going to return the character to that, the baseline, the beginning of the second act. So, in acknowledging that all of these various second acts have equal weight and value in Doomsday Clock, DC is effectively given readers of all ages and all generations this huge boon and gift. And I won't go so far as to say it's like an apology, because it doesn't read that way. But it's like a big giant celebration of all these various eras of DC that have contributed to its storied history and just made it great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. To your point on, I don't know, that we as fans can kind of go back and read any of these books. Have you ever read Grant Morrison's Super Gods? It was a history book that he wrote on.
I love that book.
He's got that great moment in there where he's talking about us as almost gods over this world, and we have this power to time travel in this 2D universe that we're guiding and creating and manipulating along the way. And I just thought that was such a great metaphor
Absolutely.
for reading across time.
Yeah. I mean, and in the establishment of this metaverse, Jeff Johns has effectively out Morrisoned Grant Morrison, because it's such a big, bold move. This isn't just Jeff Johns resurrecting Hal Jordan or Jeff Johns streamlining Hawkman's varied and storied past.
Right.
This, or the Legion, he's all these various touch-up jobs he's done of continuity over the years. This is him tackling the whole damn DC 80-year continuity, and doing it in a way that we've, so to your point, we've never seen done before. Nobody's ever done this. I really want to reiterate that. This has never been done in the entire history of comics.
Right.
Wow. I mean, I finished reading issue 10, and I just had to stop what I was doing and really just let what I had read sink in, because just the concept of this is so big.
On the structure of that issue, if we could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's get into the mechanics.
Plays into that, right? So, and that is the structure that Alan Moore created with Dr. Manhattan, with the ability to be like, okay, it is this date. I am here. This is happening. Now it's this date. And I am here, and this is happening, but this isn't right. This is happening now. Like, that kind of jumping about mimics the reading of a comic. It mimics the movement amongst panels. It mimics the movement from issue to issue, from arc to arc, from series to series in an interconnected web. And I thought that Johns took that brilliant masterwork of Moore and actually made it better. Like, he took it and was like, this can be so much more than just, this is a man that's unhinged in time. This is not Slaughterhouse-5. This is so much bigger. So I just thought that was, just remarkable.
Actually, Dan, I love the comparison to Slaughterhouse-5 because I'm a huge Kurt Vonnegut fan. So kudos. Man, I'm just almost at a loss as to what else to say, because I've got so much I want to say. I mean, we still have 2 issues of this series to go.
So where do you see it going?
Well, we have the big dangling plot thread is, why is it when Doc Manhattan looks into the future and he sees Superman coming at him to punch him and then nothing? Like, what is that? What does that mean? I have a feeling we're in for another big bang in DC continuity.
Yeah, the way I see it, there's like 4 realistic options here. There's the obvious ones. Superman kills Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan kills himself. Dr. Manhattan destroys the universe, or Dr. Manhattan restarts the whole damn thing. Like, that he becomes a crisis in and of himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it, right? Like, unless there's something completely out of left field that I can't see coming.
Well, honestly, option E is probably your best bet.
Right.
I think logically, those are all really good, sound options, except that they're all relatively obvious. And this series has not done the obvious so far at all.
Yeah, that's true.
From the establishment of a legacy version of Rorschach, which is awesome because it also tied back into a character from the original Watchmen series, to finding out after the fact that Ozymandias' grand plan failed, and made the world worse. God, just everything, man. I mean, this is gonna be one of those things that, like you're saying, 10, 20, 40 years from now, we're still going to be looking back and talking about it and dissecting it.
Yeah.
And to bring it all back around to my original point is that in and of itself shows the value of why this story needed to happen.
Right.
Because it's a goddamn masterpiece. I mean, we just don't see storytelling on this level ever. I mean, rarely, if ever.
Right. And when we do, it's usually not as cleanly executed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Gary Frank's art, wow. It's, like you're saying, at once it's obviously Gary Frank, but he's doing such a good impersonation of Dave Gibbons that it's just and not just in the line work or the inking, but also in the colors and the page layouts. That the classic 9-panel grid
Right.
that works on so many different levels in Watchmen and Doomsday Clock, and other writers think they can make work in different levels but can't. Cody knows what I'm talking about. JJ would too, but he chumped out on us today. I'm going to take a cheap shot at him.
Oh, poor JJ. JJ is working. Nick is driving.
Yeah,
Brian
they're both
is moving.
Yeah. Tough week for the Comic Watchers, which gave us a chance to run our mouths about Doomsday Clock. So,
you're welcome.
Hey, good thought. But yeah, I can't wait to see ultimately how Legion of Superheroes and the JSA ultimately spin out of this series. As we were talking about in the news segment, both books in the last week have had major relaunch announcements, which presumably were initially going to be pending the end of Doomsday Clock, but since we really don't know when the end of Doomsday Clock is, I'm guessing Dan Didio just said, "The hell with it, go with God," to Scott Snyder and Bendis. So yeah, let's do it. I can't wait to see how this happens. And actually, I really hope we don't wind up in spoiler territory for Doomsday Clock because of this. That would suck.
I don't think so. I think 11 is supposed to come out first or second week of August. And I believe that they're planning on pushing 12 quicker than they have been. But we don't have the September solicits yet.
That would mean about a November release for 12.
Right. So I thought I had read somewhere that they're going to accelerate, and that's why they're pushing 11, so that 11 comes out, 12 comes out, JSA and Legion launch.
Well, that would be fantastic. Especially with purportedly the Legion relaunch streamlining and detailing the future history of the DCU, including Commandy.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I have to assume that's going to ultimately spin out of the end of Doomsday Clock. So
yeah, somehow.
What I don't want is to be in another position where the Brian Michael Bendis comic comes out in before the end of the event series, like it did with the Iron Man relaunch in Secret Wars #9 a few years ago, because that Iron Man issue blew the end of Secret Wars.
It's kind of like the Far From Home trailer. The Far From Home trailer blew the end of Endgame.
Yeah, I mean, we knew Spider-Man was going to come back. That's not really blowing the end.
No, but I mean, in the Far From Home trailer that launched with Endgame, the newer one where he talks about the multiverse, the very opening line in that spoils one of the big deaths.
Last Endgame though had released.
I think it was within a couple of days, though. I thought it was within the first week at least.
I think it was about 2 weeks later.
Because
Like they
no,
gave people time to see it.
because I saw it 2 weeks later and already had everything spoiled for me, and I had already been avoiding the Far From Home trailer.
Oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, like, but I mean, it's the same concept. That's all I was saying.
Yeah. So, Cody, final thoughts on Doomsday Clock?
Yeah, one thing that I want to mention, Rob Lay on letters, like, that's such an understated role in comics. But his ability to recapture, and I just went and grabbed my copy of Watchmen just to make sure, but Dave Gibbons did the letters on the original Watchmen.
Yes, correct.
And Rob Lay is perfectly replicating that lettering style. And I think that that's really crucial in trying to create the same feel.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just wanted to give
a
shout out.
Had a computer generated comic craft look to it, you'd notice immediately and not like it.
Right, although come on. let's take it easy on Comic Craft.
I wasn't trying to not Comic Craft by any means. But
lettering in Hawkman right now is spectacular.
Yes. Everything in Hawkman is spectacular. What are you talking about? But yeah, I mean, lettering in and of itself is extremely underappreciated. You know when it looks awesome. John Workman, Tom Orzechowski,
Dave Sharp,
Richard Starkings. Who?
Dave Sharp.
Oh yeah, Dave Sharp. You know it when it looks good, and you recognize it. But a lot of times you may not even really think about it. But when you've got a bad letterer, you really notice because it messes up the flow of your comic.
Yep, sure does.
So yeah, letterers, we like them. But so final thoughts, Cody. Doomsday Clock. Actually, Doomsday Clock. Go for it.
So yeah, I guess in summation, like what Jeff Johns has done here, as I said before, is his legacy. Like even greater than Blackest Night and Sinestro Corps War and all of that, which was a beautiful 3-act work. This is what he will be. This is the first entry in his Wikipedia article. Like this will be Jeff Johns, known for Doomsday Clock. From here unto eternity, as long as we have records of comics, this is what he will be known for. And I mean, I cannot overhype it. This really has been one of the greatest series I've read in, how old am I? 32 years of reading comics. This is one of the greatest things I've ever read. Like I put this up there with Planetary, which is my favorite comic series of all time. And this is right neck and neck. And by the end, it could surpass Planetary. And that's, for me, something I never thought I'd say.
It's really saying something.
If you're not following this book, if you're trade waiting, I recommend not. Because you're missing out on a ride that, sometimes you got to go back and reread. But isn't that the mark of something that is deep and philosophical and well-crafted? That you can't just remember. By comparison, I just read Justice League Odyssey number 10 and wrote the review of it. And I'm never going to have to go back to Justice League Odyssey number 10. I know exactly what happened. They found 2 relics, and they argued a lot, and then they got boom to Darkseid, where they're planning to betray him. End of story. End of story. It's the details. The devil is in the details in this series. Everything demands a reread. Whether it came out monthly, bi-weekly, weekly, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to reread this series because it's so deeply layered and complex. And that's the mark of a masterpiece. So don't wait. Read it now. Enjoy it. Read it again later. Buy the trades. Buy the absolute editions. Whatever you got to do. But yeah, that's my final thought. Quit sitting on the fence waiting and bitching about the publishing schedule and just get on board because you're missing out on history in the making. Matt.
No, there's not a hell of a lot I can add to that, actually. Quit bitching because you think it's traipsing on hallowed ground, too. Get over yourself. and get over the sacred ghost of Alan Moore, who's gone crazy.
He's gonna haunt.
It's like Swamp Thing now.
He heard you. You know that, right?
I know he did, and he thinks he cast a warlock spell on me. He didn't, because that's silly. Don't
worry, Morrison will protect us.
Yes. Woohoo!
And if Morrison can't do it, that street magician that's pretending to be him can.
Gerard Way will. Anyway, this series, what it's accomplished so far, and it's not even done. There's still a hell of a lot of ground to cover in the last 2 issues, and I just can't wait to see where it goes, because really, we don't know where it's going to go. This series has accomplished astounding levels of graphic storytelling that we simply don't see but once in a blue moon in comics. Or, I mean, really any medium, you know? This quality of storytelling and craftsmanship and deliberation and detail.
It's Citizen Kane.
Oh,
it's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, the complexity of it is absolutely, you know, there's been a subplot running through occasional issues of this actor from the 1940s.
Right.
Named Conrad
Carver Coleman.
Yes, thank you. And you know, we haven't had any context for why this subplot is relevant and in the comic at all, and then it all becomes apparent in issue 10 that this actor is kind of Dr. Manhattan's petri dish for understanding this universe. And it's just the way that it's done and it is astounding. You know, the level of understanding behind the mechanics of why Watchmen works, what makes the DC universe great, and just being able to dovetail it all together is masterful. Like you're saying, this is gonna going forward. This is going to be Jeff Johns' first Wikipedia entry, and you know, he deserves to go on the Mount Rushmore of comics for this series, if absolutely nothing else. And he's had a hell of a storied career for the last 20 years.
Really has. He really has.
He has just been such a boon to the industry and a goodwill ambassador in Hollywood, and just a generally nice guy from everything I can tell, who has genuine love and enthusiasm for the characters and the craft. And that shines through on every page of Doomsday Clock. Yeah. Call it what you will. I call it a bona fide masterpiece. And you should, if you're not reading this series, I don't even know why you're reading comics. Because this is the ne plus ultra of graphic storytelling. So that is my final thought.
Excellent. Do we want to do the final segment? What have you been reading?
Yeah. It's just about the two.
All right, let's do it.
Let's knock it out.
So what have you been reading, and what are you looking forward to?
Okay, so I've been reading lots of silly Silver Age books because I got some low-grade Silver Age for cheap. So we've got an Action Comics issue where Superman becomes a lion. Okay, That's really fucking awesome. Got an Aquaman with a Nick Cardy cover. Nick Cardy is awesome. You got Sea Devils with the big tentacle sea monster, who it doesn't show on the cover, but inside he fashioned his own swim trunks. In a move that will make Grant Morrison happy, we've got Buana Beach. Yes, Animal Man, whoop whoop. And in a move that makes our absentee John Jack very jealous, we have the Bat Ape. Yes, Mogo the Bat Ape. So yeah, I've just been having fun deep diving into these silly 60s comics. What's coming up that I'm looking forward to? Man, you know what? I'm going to speak for JJ this week. War of the Realms wraps up this coming week. And it's been for me, it's been a bit of a hit or miss series, but I will give it this. It's shipped right on time. And that in today's industry means a lot. If you just sit down and read the main 6-issue series, it's not perfect by any means, but it's been fun, and I'm really excited to see how it all wraps up. So that's me for this coming week. Cody, how about you?
So I haven't really, I've read a bunch this week, but it's all been in service of reviews. So I read Stranger Things 6 #1 from Jody Houser. I'm blanking on the artist, but Keith Champagne did the inks. He's a hell of an inker. And it was an interesting series. It finally lets Jody kind of be free of the continuity of the show and just play with some new characters and some new concepts. It's a little bit of a slow start for a 4-issue mini, but it is what it is. I enjoyed that. I finally got around to reviewing Planet of the Nerds #2, which was fantastic.
Awesome.
I'm loving the work that Ahoy is putting into their books.
Yes, they're great.
There's a short story at the end of it, and then there's like a sonnet on the last page. I believe it was a sonnet. I'm trying to remember what the structure was, but a poem of some form that they just kind of threw in there because they had a writer that wanted their poem published, and they're like, "Yeah, we're down. Let's do it."
That's what's up, man. I love that.
Like it's really cool. Like they're really kind of fostering a bit of what comics can be and haven't been. At least not for a long time.
The hallmark of Ahoy, and I think this speaks a lot to the fact that it's masterminded by Tom Peyer, is the books are just fun.
Right.
I mean, Tom Peyer writes fun comics, and lo and behold, his comic line is fun. Right. How often can you just pick up your average Marvel or DC comic and say, boy, that was fun. I feel good for having read that.
Right.
So
Dial H for Hero is a little bit like that for me right now.
What is? Sorry?
Dial H for Hero is a little bit like that for me right now.
Awesome.
Where I finish it and I'm like, all right, that was fun. Like, it's not deep. It's not, reinventing the wheel or treading new ground. But what it is doing is toying with form. Each one of these new superheroes that are created gets its own art style, its own way to exist on the page. They had one in the last issue, #3, Bluebird of Happiness, done entirely in a Mark Buckingham Sandman Vertigo style.
Oh wow.
And it was just really well put together. Like, you look at it and okay, I know exactly where your inspiration for this character is. And I love it.
Nice.
It's a great job. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, there was a story too, but I don't. That was fine. As far as what I'm looking forward to, I honestly have no idea what comes out next week. Not even the slightest clue. I spent 4 hours yesterday updating the spreadsheet for July and August. So if you want to ask me what I'm looking forward to in July and August, I can tell you, but June's a mystery to me.
Hey, so talk to me about July.
So
let's look ahead.
July, and you've already claimed all the great stuff. The Jimmy Olsen series launch, the Lois Lane launch, the History of the Marvel Universe launch. You snatched all 3 of those up.
I can't believe nobody else grabbed those.
Well, and there are times where I feel like, because I dole out the assignments and track all the assignments, I'm the first C on a lot of this. I'm the first person digging through the solicits and putting it into the spreadsheet and saying, okay, somebody is going to want this book. And I feel guilty sometimes because sometimes, with Wildcats, I just put my name in. But other times, I feel like I should let you guys have a fighting chance. Get it into the spreadsheet and let y'all look at it.
Yeah.
Wildcats, that wasn't going to happen. I'm a big Wildcats fan. I'm a big Warren Ellis fan. This was going to be me.
I got you. As soon as that Bendis Legion news broke today, I was on the message pretty damn quick. So you give that to anybody else, and it's on. So, because I love the Legion just that much. So, yeah, I get
I'm
that.
actually a little bit looking forward to August's Absolute Carnage
Really?
story. Just reading the solicits, because I spent so much time reading them yesterday. um, it actually looks like it could be a fun miniseries in a way that I wanted War of the Realms to be fun
Right.
and didn't find War of the Realms fun. Like, I'm exactly the opposite of you and JJ on War of the Realms. I don't think Aaron is a gifted writer at all.
Well, to
I feel like he's
clarify, I'm
Jason.
enjoying the series, but I'm not in love with the series.
I feel like Jason Aaron is the Jason Statham of comics.
I love that because I totally see it.
Right, right. Like, there's no explanation needed. Just walk away from the explosion and don't look back.
Except at the same time, Jason Statham does make some fun movies. And he makes some absolute shit too, but
Absolutely.
what?
Absolutely. No, I don't know. But that's me. Like, I'm looking forward to a lot of stuff in August right now, and I'm sure I'm looking forward to stuff next week. I think I don't know if it was this week or next week that Calamity Kate ends from Dark Horse. I think it was this week. I think it was actually Wednesday. I might have that book sitting around here. But that's been a fun little series that I didn't see coming.
Was that on the Burger Books line?
Maybe. I'm gonna go strong maybe on that.
Okay.
Probably. But I lost track. Dark Horse is so hard to keep track of because they do publish erratically. They will actually,
and they publish a lot of very different stuff. Like, they don't seem to have much of a unifying theme to their books,
right,
or look, or niche.
when they send out their advanced copies to press and reviewers so far in advance. Like, I just got the July 3rd books today.
Oh, wow.
But then they sometimes have problems with shipping. So it's like, I have a book that's supposed to come out today that I know is finished and has been finished for a month that comes out the next week. So it's like, I don't know exactly where Dark Horse is at any given moment, but they put out a lot of really solid stuff.
Yeah, the problem is anybody buying it?
Well, I mean, enough people are buying it that they haven't gone under, and I mean, I really thought
somebody's clearly buying it. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
they're not the strong presence they were, say, 20 years ago, or even. I mean, the loss of the Star Wars line was inevitable, but I don't think they've rebounded as a company from that.
I think they're about market share wise about where they were at that point.
That's interesting.
But a part of that is they're being buoyed by the street magician. What's his friggin' name?
Gerard Way.
Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, Gerard Way.
Yeah. Umbrella Academy has really buoyed their sales a lot.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, and the trades are selling like crazy right now.
Maybe that's their future.
Oh, it could be.
Yeah.
The final, or the most recent volume of that, the final issue came out this week.
So,
I haven't read any of them yet, but I will.
I've never read any of them either. The street magician is the street magician. Take him or leave him.
I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I guess that's it for us this week. We've rambled over an hour, just the two of us. I'm rather impressed.
Congratulations.
Well, I'm relieved that we didn't try to have that Doomsday Clock discussion with like four of us. So
right.
that could have gotten a little unbuildable.
Yeah, we had definitely talked about it and had a feeling like this could not work. So this worked out really well. Fun show. And that's it for us this week. Bye.
Bye.